Brent, if you're ready, I think it's 7 o'clock. We're going to call it to order this meeting of the Valley Center Planning Commission, Zoning Board and Board of Zoning Appeals, Planning and Zoning Board, Board of Zoning Appeals, for November 23rd. For those who are willing and able, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Justice for all. Thank you. Brent, if we start with the roll call, please.
Brian Shelton. Here. Paul Stark.
Here.
Gary Hammond.
Here.
Rick Shelton.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Steve Pop.
Here.
Toby Meadow.
Thank you, sir. First item is to set or amend the agenda for tonight. I do have one item that we're going to change on tonight's agenda. Item number 4, which is an application for variance to allow for a portion of commercial building to be used as a temporary residential living space, will be removed from the agenda tonight. It's my understanding the fee was not paid to be on the agenda, so we'll remove that from the agenda tonight. Are there any other questions, comments, anything related to the agenda? If not, I'll make a motion that the agenda be approved with the amendment to remove item number 4 from tonight's agenda.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next item is approval of draft minutes of the October 26th meeting. Are there any questions, comments related to the draft minutes? If not, I move that we approve the minutes from the October 26th meeting.
I'll second.
Second by Paul. Motion is second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Any communications, Brent?
Not this time.
Okay. Before we move on to the public hearings, I might let everybody know who's here. A couple things. If you have not signed in, please make sure you sign in. And when we have specific public agenda items, there will be a point in time when we open up the public hearing. You will have an opportunity then to come to the podium, provide your name and address, and you'll be allowed to speak for 5 minutes then on any particular item. But we'll make sure you know it's clear when we get to that point. So before we begin, item number 1, I do want to recognize that Mayor Cicerello is with us tonight. Thank you, Mayor, for being here with us. Mayor, I don't think I missed any other council members. I want to make sure I didn't, so I think you're the only one here. So thank you for being here with us tonight. So the first public hearing tonight is review of SD 2021-03, application of Iron Horse Development LLC pursuant to section 1604, who is petitioning for approval of final plat for the land located southwest of the intersection of 5th Street and Seneca. And Brent, will let you start us off.
Good evening. How are we doing? All right, so you are stuck with me. I do apologize that we do have our community development director, Mr. Ryan Schrack, as well as the administrative assistant, Angie Basin, is absent this evening, spending time with family for the holiday season. So you're stuck with me. So I appreciate your patience. Before you here, as you see on the screen, is at the corner of 5th or 85th and Seneca Street. This is the final plat for Trails End. This has had multiple comments, revisions from city staff and the developer. We do have with us this evening SEH representative Jake Vassa, as well as Iron Horse Development team. If you do want to listen to them during the public comment period, I would be more than happy to invite them to speak before you as well. Before you here, this is an area that will be split up into single-family residential, commercially zoned area as well, and then an area to the south where the plans will be to have that deeded over to the city for a park, roughly 62 acres, that would then take care of the drainage way that is currently owned by Sedgwick County. So this passed all the tests when it comes to a final plat, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Brent. Just a reminder to the board members, we did see the preliminary plat on this several meetings ago,
Yes. or last
probably.
meeting.
7:06 will open up the public hearing. Would the agents like to speak for the developer? Anything you would like to provide relevant to this development?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Jake Basha with SEH, as Brent mentioned. I got 5 minutes, so I'll try to keep it brief. As he kind of mentioned, just to revisit this, we were here at Planning Commission for the prelim plat. There were a few questions at that time. Some of the questions that came up had to do with traffic and drainage were kind of two main questions that came up. So we completed our traffic study, our traffic impact study. One of the main concerns was access to and from Fifth Street into the development, particularly the commercial there in that corner, which we don't really have a good idea what it's going to be yet. So it's kind of a black box at this moment. So after completing the traffic impact study, based on some assumptions we've made on what type of traffic that can generate, the traffic study did indicate that a middle left-hand turn lane would be required for the full access locations. And so it will be considered that potentially the best option for that stretch is to widen Fifth Street to include a center left-hand turn lane, the entire stretch from Seneca to the bridge. That would allow for left-hand turn lanes westbound on Fifth Street into the development.
So how do we know that that happens? Are there petitions being provided as a guarantee with the plat, or is that just something that happens, the city's got to take care of later when the traffic counts necessitate that, or what?
That'll be in the developer's agreement.
Okay,
And so before you tonight is the final plat, and then those items are taken care of with the developer's agreement, and then before building permits are issued, of course, in the site plan.
okay. I just want to make sure that I don't doubt what you just said.
Sure.
I'm kind of familiar with more what happens in Wichita metro area, and I just want to make sure there's some type of guarantee that make sure that turn lane happens.
And actually, if you look in between the commercial lots there, kind of right where my cursor is, that area actually will not have a left turn, and there'll be a right in, right out with the city of Wichita standards that we're using that we did discuss previously. So, but then moving westbound from there will then be center left turns when you're heading west into that Trails Avenue, as well as the subdivision itself. And so that area right there in between the commercial lots would be a right in, right out.
Right, I
Only.
have to correct you. That's actually between lot 4.
Okay, is it 4 and 5?
Yep.
I can't see it this small.
Cursor is that is a full access.
Oh, right here, okay, yeah, sorry.
Yep, sorry, that little one.
But as part of the developer's agreement, we'll make sure that happens with the
Thank you.
development and the infrastructure improvements of the development, right? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly where it was, sorry. I
Any
knew it was
other-
over there somewhere.
No, thank you. Any
So
questions?
Just out of curiosity, how much of the new improvements that we did on Fifth Street are going to be removed on that south side?
I would have to defer to, our engineers, or even if Jake has an idea, but I don't believe any will be removed. They'll just be added to. There may be just a connection strip, that has to be made when it comes to connecting to the asphalt, but none of the actual, roadway itself would be torn up. It'll just be added to and widened.
Okay.
Similar to what you've seen, except for just maybe in a little bit smoother transition, kind of over by Amazon off of Broadway when they added those turn lanes. If anybody's been over there, we'll be adding to, not removing.
That was my concern.
Yep.
Hate to tear up stuff that we just put in.
Yep, absolutely. That was strongly considered with the trail
Yeah.
on the south side of that as well.
Any other comments, questions so far? Thank you.
The other item that was of concern on the previous meeting was the drainage. So we did get our drainage report back from the company Wood that did the drainage study. It was very concise about the 100-year flood and what was happening to the base flood elevation that's set by FEMA. Obviously, that's is something important to us as a development. We want to make sure our lots are above that base flood elevation. So it did indicate that the base flood elevation in this area is dropping by roughly 2 feet. And that basin area will fill up during the 100-year flood and release it at a rate similar to what it's at right now. Maybe a little bit more actually, because it does take in a little bit more of the land of the drainage, I should say, from Prairie Lakes.
You know, one of the questions we had before about was the kind of the reserve area where I think the Frisbee golf course is going to be through that area and kind of the public area. You know, we seem to have a lot of 100-year floods anymore. So 100-year floods, a 1% chance each year, right? But we've had some years that I think we've had a half a dozen 100-year floods in the same year. Is that going to be designed and built in a way that can accommodate that? I mean, because the reason why I ask, we see some areas that when they get inundated like that, it just basically ruins everything around it. Is that, I assume, part of the consideration to make that
Absolutely.
not so intensive for the city to have to maintain?
Yep, we're
Have to go back in and fix it all up, right?
correct. We're working through programming right now for that park right now to really find out what can be in the park, what can be above the base flood elevation in that park area, and what is appropriate to be at the flow line, I should say, or in an area that will be inundated relatively frequently.
I know that's not exactly relevant to us approving the plat tonight, but I still wanted to ask the question, so.
Yep, absolutely. We're working with.
Will, actually during the December Outdoor Spaces Board meeting, that'll be a topic on their agenda for discussion and working with LK Architecture and working on some what they envision with this park. And yes, certain structures will be made to, of course, be water for a short period of time. Large cooling of water at times there will be water that rises that handle and make sure that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know there's another part of this, but I appreciate you responding to that. Any questions so far? Thank you. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item? And keep in mind, we have two separate items for the same development. The first one is the final plat. The second one is rezoning for that immediate southwest corner at Seneca and 85th Street, more or less. Or the whole thing. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Okay, if not, at 7:14, we'll close the public hearing. Return discussion to the board. Any questions, comments, anything that anybody wants to add? I think we've had quite a bit of time to see what this development looks like. I'm excited to see it happen. Having been in Valley Center for 15 years, I'm glad to really glad to see this is happening and hopefully can keep moving forward. So if there's no additional questions or comments, based on city staff recommendations, public comments and discussions by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve SD 202103.
Second.
Second by Rick. We have motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on. Item number 2 is review of RZ 2021-06, application of Iron Horse Development LLC pursuant to section 1711, who's petitioning for rezoning of land that's currently zoned A1, which is city's designation for an agricultural district, to R1B and C2, which is city's designations for single-family residential district and general business district respectively. The land is located southwest of the intersection of Fifth Street and Seneca. And I did say that wrong on the last item. It's rezoning for the entire thing. So Brent, the podium is yours.
Good evening again. The developer, Iron Horse, I did give you a larger copy in front of you that kind of shows out, lays out nicely when it comes to the areas, the residential as well as the reserve. The proposed zoning in front of you is the R1B, single family residential. And then the corner of this property on the northeast of this parcel on the southwest of the intersection would be proposed zoning of C2 general business district. Now with this property, this is a part of the Tiff district. And then so there will be stipulations on that as well in developer's agreement where it really spells out what businesses in that C2 zoning will be allowable and not. And so this is just the overall general zoning per the city code. And then the developer's agreement will get a little bit into the nuts and bolts more so. I'll stand for any questions.
I might ask Brent about notification, always like to ask about the notification area of this and if we've had any responses on this.
We have not received any responses that I'm aware of formally in writing. There may be folks in the audience from the public, but we have not received any in the community development office.
Okay. What does this mean, general commercial? Not to ask the developer to predict, but what might go in here?
You were spot on that.
And I'll tell you why let me tell you why I'm asking. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm kind of curious about something. I remember sitting in this same room quite a few years ago when the doctor's office was being built on the northwest corner. And this room was packed, absolutely packed with people who did not want a doctor's office there. And we went through a lot of discussions about things. And so I was curious of what type of use could be here compared to what's there with a doctor's office and a church. And maybe it doesn't really matter, but I was kind of curious.
Great thing is, just like everybody, this is a good opportunity to learn about the city's website. So if you go on, just like anyone can at any given time, you can go ahead and go on to the community development. You can go into the zoning regulations, subdivision regulations. And right here, you will see this lovely table of contents that then tells you exactly where it would be when it comes to the C2.
Sorry, Brent. I didn't mean to.
I was going to ask him anyway.
No, it's worth the time.
All right. And then you scroll on down here, right here. So 1704, 759, and it doesn't bring you there, but it brings you close. We're working on that. And so before you hear, these will be the permitted uses. Types of things that you can see located in that area.
There you go, liquor store.
And yes, number 10 does say grocery and convenience stores. I know people are excited for those things.
Looks to me like what you would generally expect with commercial zoning.
And then, of course, special uses that would then have a different process, but would potentially be have another process to go through, not just a stamped process that would be.
Well, I think that makes sense. The discussion we had with everyone that night was the fact that 85th Street and Seneca is two arterial streets, and Valley Center's comprehensive plan contemplates that as commercial development. So it shouldn't have really been a surprise to anybody. So I was just curious to see what that said. So good. Thank you, Brent. Any questions for Brent so far? If not, it's 7:20 and we'll open up the public hearing. And you don't have to. Any comments from developer's agent, anything you want to add?
Hi, everyone. My name is Levi Bond. I'm with Iron Horse Development. Just want to let everyone know that we're here tonight if you have any questions for us. This is taking the zoning for the residential, making it R1B, which is the best for the building footprint that we're looking at for these, instead of the R1A, and then just general commercial on the corner, and we'll work out the specific uses that are going to be allowed through the TIF during the development agreement.
Good, thank you. We appreciate that. And I think it makes a lot of sense, right? If we're going to build a residential development this big, it really makes sense to have that commercial there too. So, okay. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this particular item related to this development, the rezoning of the property to residential for the housing area and to commercial for the corner? Now's the time. Yes, sir. If you could come to the podium and give us your name and address, that would be great.
Garrett Withar, 8110 North Seneca. I guess it's just more of a question of if we're improving 85th Street, are we doing anything for the traffic on Seneca? Because I see there's possibly, are there entrances to the commercial?
Well, I appreciate you asking that because I did not ask that. Are there any?
I know there was a tip
So I know-
or something, we were going to get a grant. To
I know we're
improve the
looking at
bridge.
future federal funding on Seneca, and I'm not sure where that's currently at. But
And so unfortunately, we did apply for cost share program again through KDOT. We were not successful in achieving that grant, but we will continue to apply for grants. Of course, Seneca Street, we do have kind of a concept right now. It would include really a 3-lane road with the majority of it being medians and then left turn lanes, as well as for all the developments, including this one here on the screen, including the 4th, 5th, whatever phase you want to call Prairie Lakes, as well as Cedar Ridge. Every one of those developments would also have a right turn off of Seneca Street as well. And so we're really trying to get different, funding opportunities, applying for grants, but it is part of the TIF project when it comes to the bridge over the floodway currently and those things. So it's part of the TIF project, but there's not enough total funds to cover the entire cost. So we're also trying to apply for grants to come up with the city portion as well. So working through it, of course, on Ford Street during that project is when Seneca will be realigned on the north side of the road. And so then it will connect north-south on the south side. It will connect straight. And so that house on the corner of 77th that the city acquired will be demolished. And then that road will connect to Seneca Street, existing Seneca Street today. That will be a part of the KDOT economic development grant that we received for Ford Street. So our plans are to bid that coming up in the spring, and then started construction late spring, early summer of next year. So that will help on the southern part of Seneca between 85th and Ford. And then we'll pick up from there and continue north as soon as we have funding available. Of course, with construction, with as many vehicles and everything we're going to be putting on this road, you kind of like to beat up the existing road now, and instead of putting $5 or $6 million into a road and then tearing it all up with construction vehicles. So yes, there is a plan. There is a concept that has been reviewed by city staff and used for grant applications. Any grant that we're eligible for, we will definitely be applying for.
thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. And thank you for asking that question. So I know through the infrastructure bill that was just passed by the Congress and the president signed into law, there's going to be additional funding coming to each state and what they call formula funds. So we're expecting lots more opportunities for more direct type funding through WAMPO to come to our region. I think there's going to be more opportunities for projects like this. At least we'll keep our fingers crossed. So I think they certainly look just like the cost share did, even though it didn't work out. It looks for partnerships with new development and things like that. So I think hopefully this will be a good opportunity. Anybody else in the public like to speak on this item? If not, it's 7:25 and we'll close the public hearing. Return the discussion to the board. Any comments, questions, anything you want to add? If not, based on city staff recommendations, public comments and discussions by the planning and zoning board, I make a motion to approve RZ 2021-06.
Second.
Brian, second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Good, thank you. Last public agenda item we have is review of RZ 2021-07, application of Joshua and Cindy Malello pursuant to section 1711, who's petitioning for a rezoning of land that is currently zoned C2, which is the city's designation for a general business district, to A1, which is the city's designation for agricultural district. Land is currently unaddressed, but is located immediately east of 3059 East 5th Street in Valley Center. Brent, if you would, please.
Good evening again. So this one may look familiar. Wanted to develop a little coffee shop type of facility with a drive-through and kind of rezoned it and did some lot splits and those things at that time. So this did go through the formal process of rezoning it to a C2 zone. And so unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition with those current property owners at that time. They did end up selling the property to Josh and Cindy Malello. I always mess up your last name, I'm sorry. Who have a phenomenal business and strong roots, healthy farming. And so they moved their operations from really, in town, kind of by the intermediate school, to this location, giving them a lot of opportunities off of 5th Street or 85th to expand their business. But in doing so, we don't need it to be zoned C2 because they're agriculturally zoned with greenhouses and all those things and what they actually do. So they're not going to have a sit-down restaurant as far as the drive-up and the coffee shop that you saw earlier this year with the previous property owners. And so we need to correct and actually put it back to A1, which is what the property owners request.
Thank you,
New property
Brent.
owners. Don't know if that sums it up enough.
No, I think it does. And when I saw this property come up, I remembered what this was because I think it kind of looked like a neat deal at the time with the idea of building a coffee shop. And hey, why not? But this is, I live in Valley Meadows, so I see the greenhouse and this is neat to see. Yeah.
Yeah. If you never signed up, quick plug for them for their shares, it's phenomenal. And you get a weekly allotment of all the great vegetables and produce.
Yeah. Now,
so even though we don't have a grocery store, it's a good alternative for all of our residents here in Valley Center.
I wish I had. It's just neat to see because I live right down the street. In fact, for what it's worth, this is totally a side note, but when we've had requests to make accessory structures bigger and look for special considerations, they always want to reference the greenhouse and how that was permitted. So it's got nothing to do with you. It just seems like that comes up. Anyway, side note. All right. Any questions, comments so far? If not, at 7:29, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there you're welcome. If you've got anything you'd like to add, anything you'd like to say.
Joshua Malello, 3059 East 5th Street. And we're the people building the greenhouse and more to come. We're really trying to expand that because of, we're almost a food desert. I mean, technically we're not, but it's close. And just having regenerative vegetables that we consider beyond organic and moving into that and having a commercial lot, we want people to pick up and go. And we really don't want to have an eat-in service or anything like that, as Brett had said. And it's really a commercial lot also hamstrings us a little bit because we want to use organic fertilizer, which means straight from the source. So we want to have chickens to be able to go through there on the commercial lot and that kind of stuff and taking care of seeds and just as natural as humanly possible as our website. We also bought the property, with the understanding that it was agriculture in the first place by the previous owners. So it was a bit of surprise when we went in to get our zoning permit for the new greenhouse that it was commercially zoned. And here we are. Any questions?
I've got one question. Where are the chickens now? Used to watch the chickens who were out in the front yard.
Where do the chickens go?
Where did they go? Yeah.
They're in the pasture now, in the back pasture, but they will be.
They were always,
we rotated them through the
they
front
were
yard
always
and all that.
entertaining as we drove by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're still there. Matter of fact, the flock is growing. So
Okay. No coyotes then.
no coyotes yet. We don't call them in like you call them in, then you have problems. We leave them alone. They leave us alone.
I think this is,
We're pretty good at what we do.
I think this is a really neat deal. I applaud you for what you do. And this is the first time I can remember us undoing zoning, at least in this short a period of time. So that's okay. I think it's for good use. So thank you. Anybody else from the public who'd like to speak on this item? If not, 7:31, we'll close the public hearing. Return the discussion to the board. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll make it 3 for 3. Based on the city staff recommendations, public comments and discussions by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve RZ 2021-07.
Second.
Rick, second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Good luck. All right, Brent, moving on to new business. Review and approval of Tiff District Project Plan.
Good evening again. Now you know how the council feels every time I get up and do that, but I'm
That's why we don't let them get up very often.
trying to tone it back for you.
You started, I said, I was gonna say a word.
Enough from the audience. No, so here's a resolution before you, per the TIP district and the really the state guidance on how to proceed forward with a redevelopment in a TIP district. The Planning and Zoning Board does get an opportunity to review the redevelopment plan and their project plan on exactly what is going to be happening in the Prairie Lakes, Now Trails End area. And we do request formal approval and really an opportunity for you to look at the project plan that was emailed out to you. Questions? And of course, our amazing, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our Assistant City Administrator and Finance Director, Mr. Barry Smith, put a tremendous amount of effort and work into the project plan and can get into more detail if that is something that you all request.
I don't think so. Does anybody have any questions? Anything? If you've had a chance to look at this, I think we've kind of heard quite a bit about this. There's some stuff in here that probably gets pretty deep, which is okay. I don't know if you would mind very briefly discussing again for everybody's benefit how a TIF works, a TIF district works, because, we see these a lot in Wichita, and they're primarily focused on commercial development areas. I applaud Mr. Austin and others for pushing forward on this, and Brent, you being a part of it, and everybody else that's looked at this, because typically it wouldn't, in the past, at least in this area, hasn't always applied to residential, but I think it's a great opportunity to look at it here.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, you probably would do even a better job explaining a TIF district. But so basically what's happening here and where this breakdown and TIF eligible costs are. And so it's a tax increment financing district. So what happens is right now that property is generating property taxes. what is being generated right now from it is frozen. And so that current dollar amount still gets allocated to all the taxing entities throughout Sedgwick County, the city included. And then so there's improvements that are then made to that area, the TIF district boundaries, which you have previously seen and that are in this plan, are then established in this blue line area. And what that does is then all the improvements within this blue area, which here's the fourth, fifth, whatever phase, Prairie Lakes you want to call it, Prairie Lakes, and then also the north, the Trails End residential, even the commercial, all these areas in the blue, when they're developed, that increases the property taxes that are generated. And so your base still stays here and all your tax entities still collect their funds. And then it's the incremental difference from that base up that then pay for certain eligible TIF project costs. And so here, I just had up on the screen, then go into these types of eligible costs. And so land acquisition, park improvements, the dirt work. And so all the dirt work that then brings that area out of the floodplain, all those are TIF eligible expenses.
Because they're a benefit to the public.
The benefit to the public. And it benefits the public as well as the developer, so then they can develop that property to increase our tax base. And so that's why your base stays here, and then that incremental difference then goes to paying for those costs to improve that property. And then over the course, of course, the incremental difference, depending upon how fast they go, which will be in the developer's agreement, which is a very lengthy agreement that is prepared, of course, by our bond counsel and attorneys that put all that language together that really lock in the city and the developer on what the expectations are, how many houses will be built. Typically around here, now this is new to me because coming from Nebraska, I mean, we TIF everything. We TIF a TIF to TIF. Because we don't have all the tools that we have in Kansas when it comes to property tax abatements and some of those other things. And so typically in Central County, it's been more focused on the commercial side because the tax rate is higher on the commercial side. And so those TIF bonds are paid off earlier, and it's a little easier to get the project done when it deals with more commercial versus residential. Because of the percentage of the assessed value that is taxed. And so in doing so, one of the qualifying events, of course, has to be that the majority of this area has to be in the floodplain. And so that's what makes this property in blue eligible to be a TIF district. Of course, the TIF district boundaries have been approved by Sedgwick County, as well as the city council. And then all the taxing entities have been notified. And so this resolution before you this evening starts the next steps and shows that the feasibility study has been completed, that it does financially make sense to proceed forward with the TIF district and the eligible expenses to remove the area of the floodplain for land acquisition, for the redevelopment of the public infrastructure, and that does benefit the public as well as making this area developable. Again, here are the eligible costs: the detention basin, land acquisition, Seneca full depth reconstruction, what we talked about previously, that $6 million, with the improvements made to that area, as well as the proposed 52-acre park. And then the section that the county owns is another 10 acres or so, that little strip. So that's why it doesn't say 62. Because right now that's actually owned by the county. So we'll, transfer that deed intergovernmentally between the two parties.
Is
that what you wanted?
Yeah, no, it's very good. I appreciate that. And I'm just asking, not to put anybody on the spot, does the developer have to guarantee any of the $11.2 million in the instance that the development doesn't pan out?
Yes, and so that will be all spelled out in the developer's agreement. Of the percentage that the city is requesting for a letter of credit to be issued towards the total project. And so that's part of the developers agreement. This one's looking at the feasibility study of it, of will that property and the proposed project generate enough tax revenue to cover all the eligible expenses as laid out here before you. And I'll defer to Mr. Tim Austin, who's the guru and expert in these in the area, as well as Assistant City Administrator Barry Smith, who put together the feasibility study.
No, and I appreciate that. And it's not that we don't want to hear from Tim and Barry, but you answered my question. I think it's great. It provides a mechanism to develop a property that most likely would not get developed otherwise. Like I said, I've been here for 15 years and it's just sat there, and I think it would continue to sit there if it wasn't for looking at this. So I think it's great. I'm glad that the thought was there and excited to see what happens. So, I mean, we all know the issues that Prairie Lakes has had, and this will help them too. So I think it's great. So
I really want to thank, Tim Austin, Brad Seville, and really everyone at Iron Horse Development for having faith in Valley Center and wanting to invest and develop the property. Now, Valley Center, we are open for business. We want to encourage development as much as we can and form those public-private partnerships that we really strive to achieve in Valley Center.
it's what I'm convinced it's what's making communities grow. It really is public-private partnership. So any questions, comments related to this?
What happens after 20 years?
So 20 years, or when the TIF bonds are all paid off, it goes 100% on the tax roll.
Okay.
And so 100% of then the taxes will then go to all the taxing entities that are currently receiving taxes today.
Okay. So the houses and whatever are going to be, the taxes will go up at that time in 20 years?
No, the taxes remain the same. And so the taxes, the folks that are moving into these properties, they still pay property taxes.
Right.
It's just where their property tax revenue goes.
Gotcha.
And so when they pay, let's say, $2,000 of property taxes, $500 of it might go to the tax entities from that baseline, but then the remaining increase, $1,500 goes to paying off the TIF bonds.
Got it.
As soon as the TIF bonds are paid off, then 100% of it goes to all the taxing entities.
If the TIF bonds are paid off early?
Yep, then it goes on early.
That goes on early.
Yep. As soon as those are paid off. So that's why you really want to be mindful. Apologize for all the emails coming up. That's why you really want to be mindful of what the city spends when it comes to Seneca Street, when it comes to the park itself, making sure that it's reasonable.
As a property owner, you don't know the difference, right, and where it's going. As a
Absolutely.
citizen of Valley Center, we want to make sure, and as you mentioned, it takes the county, it takes the school board, it takes city council to agree that this is a wise investment. So
the next steps are, if the resolution is approved by this board, then that gives the council the authority then to establish the public hearing. And that has to occur no earlier than 30 days after the resolution is passed by city council. And so that would be on the December 7th, if this board so chooses to approve this resolution. Then that really starts the ball rolling with the city council on December 7th. And then during the January 19th meeting is when that actual public hearing will be held, giving all the entities an opportunity to voice any concerns between that December 7th and that January 19th date. And then after January 19th, the council proceeds forward and developers agreement, everything looks great. Then we'll sign, seal, and deliver with the developers. And then we'll start the process of the next steps of actually starting to move some dirt.
nice.
That's the plan, right, Tim? That's the plan.
Question, real quick question. My experience with TIFs and residential is that the assessed valuation of each house or the cumulative assessed valuation of the TIF district is pretty important. So the price point of those homes becomes very important in terms of the whole TIF bonds and how the project finally comes out in terms of how the city, from a financial standpoint, comes out. So that the type of homes that are built and the value of those homes is pretty important.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you guys have addressed that.
Yes, absolutely. That's what all the models are, based off of it, the approximate, number of homes as well as a approximate value of assessed value that those properties will be
Right.
as well.
Yeah, that's really at any time.
I'll see, what is that?
The ones on the north side and Trails End will be in that $400,000 range for the plat that you previously approved during this meeting, the final plat.
Right.
And then the ones in the Prairie Lakes will be in that 225 range, depending upon, of course, the finishes and lot sizes, because they kind of vary, but it's kind of the average.
Perfect, thank you. So you need a recommendation from us, correct?
We need the resolution to be formally approved by this board if they so choose. And then I do have the resolution number does have to be stated in there, 0121. And then I do have 2 copies, original copies, that I do have to have the chairman sign if this does receive approval from you all.
Any other questions or comments? So Brent, if I can make a recommendation that we approve resolution 0121 as presented.
Second.
We have motion and a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any other items for us?
No, Mr. Chair.
Order unfinished business. Any items by planning commissioners? You happen to know, Mr. City Administrator, if we have a meeting scheduled for December? And one of the reasons why I ask is typically we've moved it to about the second week in the years past of December just to avoid holidays, but
I'm not sure. That's one of the things I did not actually talk with Mr. Ryan Track about. So
you did a good job up until now.
I do know.
That's usually how it works.
It's on the
Gets through most of the meetings.
It's on the 16th.
I'll remember that. What's that?
On the 16th.
It's on the 16th. I don't believe that we have any
should've known
any submittals that I'm aware of. Of course, this coming Monday is the deadline, so we may receive something.
Sure, and that's okay. I was just
by
curious.
Monday
It's fine.
at 5 o'clock. Which is
Sounds
the
like it's on
deadline.
the 16th. I appreciate you acknowledging that, so.
We did do the final plat already of Hidden Valley. That's on the agenda. Yep,
I think so, yeah. Okay,
You never know, though. Something could come up. So mark it on your calendar still and save the date.
we'll do that. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you all for being here tonight. Yes, sir.
Question. Mike George, I live at 1224 West 85th North, right next door to Dr. Orwin. I have a question on TIF bonds because I need to be educated. You're talking 300 plus houses in this new housing development that's within the TIF district, correct? All of that money for the taxes goes to pay the TIF bonds off. If you figure 2 children per household, that's 600 and some kids. We're going to have improvements to our schools. That's going to saddle everybody else in the school district with the school improvements for 20 years or whenever till the TIF's paid off. Mike George. That's all. That's the question I had is all of those people there are actually, because their money's going to the TIF bond, are not going to be supporting the schools financially. Just a thought.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And Brent, that's up to you whether you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, just because, we just had our last meeting last night, actually, for the USD 262 strategic plan. There has been a committee, strategic planning committee that has met twice this month, actually, looking exactly at what you're speaking to. That survey now is online, available on the USD 262 website, as well as on Facebook account to go on and cast your opinion on what the strategic planning committee has put together. And so they're looking at strategically in 5 years, how do you handle the growth and what are the expectations of the school district in the next 5 years. And so that's something that, isn't common when it comes to school districts on having the strategic plan and have a separate committee. A lot of time the school district, the board members will just go through it themselves and approve it. But this one actually, I think there was maybe 30 of us on the strategic planning committee that kind of came up with the key items to look at. And one of the biggest ones, of course, is growth. And how do you handle growth and what the expectation is of the school district. We are fortunate enough to have an incredible school district in 262 to where, we are I believe the fourth lowest per pupil for educating our students of tax dollars. And so our district runs really lean and efficient when it comes to tax dollars. But then on the other hand, we are one of the top 5 school districts, I believe, for teacher pay. And so we're paying at a high level and we're still educating our students for one of the lowest per pupil in the entire state of Kansas. So hats off to Dr. Gibson and Dr. Bonner and everything they do at the school district. And we have a phenomenal partnership between the city and USD 262 that we know will continue on into the future.
Another quick question. When the development, in terms of the agreement with the city, I would make a recommendation that the higher value homes be built first. And so that you've got some protection for that TIF because I've seen this before in my prior experience where it's an issue that's not been addressed, and they will develop some of the lower taxable valuation homes because they'll sell out quick. They also bring a lot of kids, and then they say, well, we're not quite ready to build the higher price point homes. So just think about that in terms of your agreement with the developer.
Appreciate
from
that.
the city, because it can come to bite you.
Yep. And it will, really depend upon, dirt work, permitting, and making sure that, we're working closely with Tim and the developers, and they've been really
Right.
appreciative and accepting of our opinions and input. So
Right. So
we'll make sure to consider that when we're looking at developers
you
agreement.
have to, with a potentially cyclical economy, you have to be cognizant of protecting the taxpayers on the TIF so that the taxable valuation is there.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's just something to think about when you finalize that agreement.
Sounds good.
Good, thank you. And I appreciate you asking that question. If there's nothing else, thank you again for being here tonight. Mayor Ciccarello, thank you for joining us again. I would move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving.